The space station called Meridian 7 was the largest school in the galaxy. It floated in the darkness between three star systems, and young beings from hundreds of different worlds came here to learn. They came to become soldiers, scientists, and leaders. They came to serve the Galactic Union. Arrived on a cold morning in the station's artificial calendar. She was 23 years old, with black hair that she kept tied back and eyes that noticed everything. She came from Earth, from a small country called Korea, and she was one of the first humans ever allowed to study at the academy. The aliens watched her as she walked through the arrival hall. Some of them had never seen a human before. They whispered to each other in languages she did not understand, but she could guess what they were saying. She had heard it all before. That was what they called humans. It was not meant as a compliment. Earth was classified as a death world, a planet so dangerous that most species could not survive there for even one day. The gravity was crushing. The air was filled with a gas called oxygen that could burn metal over time. The temperature changed wildly from burning hot to freezing cold, and everywhere on Earth, things were trying to kill each other. Humans had evolved in this hell. They were stronger than they looked. They could heal from wounds that would kill other species. They could run for hours without stopping. They could eat foods that were poison to most aliens, and they were stubborn in a way that frightened the older races. Knew all of this. She also knew that most of the aliens staring at her were afraid. She did not want them to be afraid. She wanted to make friends. She wanted to prove that humans could be trusted. So she smiled at everyone she passed, even when they did not smile back. Her room was small but clean. She unpacked her few belongings and placed a photograph on her desk. It showed her family back on Earth, standing in front of mountains covered in green trees. She missed them already, but she had worked too hard to get here. She would not waste this chance. On her second day, she met. He was also Korean, also human, and he had arrived at the academy 2 months before her. He was tall and quiet, with a serious face that rarely showed emotion. But when he saw in the cafeteria, struggling to understand the alien food dispensers, he walked over and helped her without being asked. "The blue button is for protein," he said in Korean. "The green one is for plants. Stay away from the yellow one unless you want to spend the night in the medical bay." Laughed. It was the first time she had laughed since leaving Earth. They became friends quickly. It was natural, almost inevitable. They were the only two humans on the entire station, and they understood things about each other that no alien could. They knew what it felt like to be stared at. They knew the weight of representing their entire species, and they knew the loneliness of being so far from home. Had been a soldier before coming to the academy. He did not talk about it much, but could see it in the way he moved, always alert, always ready. She had been a student, top of her class in Earth's orbital training program. They were different in many ways, but those differences made them stronger together. They trained together every morning. The Academy's combat courses were designed for dozens of different species, so humans had to work twice as hard to meet the standards, but discovered that she was faster than most of her classmates. Her reflexes, sharpened by millions of years of evolution on a death world, gave her an advantage that no amount of training could match. The instructors noticed. Some of them were impressed, others were not. Advisor was one of the ones who were not impressed. He was a member of one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been part of the Galactic Union for over 1,000 years. They held positions of power everywhere, and they did not like change. They especially did not like humans. Made his feelings clear from the first day. He gave the hardest assignments. He criticized her performance in front of the entire class. He called her the animal from the death world when he thought she could not hear. She heard, she always heard, but she did not complain. She just worked harder. "He wants you to fail," told her one night. They were sitting in the observation deck, watching ships come and go from the station. "He wants you to lose your temper so he can have you expelled." "I know," said. That is why I will not give him what he wants." She smiled, but there was something hard in her eyes. She was gentle, yes. She shared her food with curious aliens who wanted to try human cooking. She helped her classmates with their studies. She wrote long letters to her family back on Earth. But she was also and did not give up. What she could not know, was that was more than just a prejudiced instructor. He was part of something larger, something darker. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy's politics for centuries, and they saw humans as a threat to everything they had built. They had already decided that humanity's rise must be stopped. And they had already chosen their first target. In her small room, looked at the photograph of her family and made a promise to herself. She would graduate. She would make them proud. She would show the galaxy that humans deserved their place among the stars. She did not know that she had only 3 months left to live. 3 months passed like water through fingers, grew stronger. Her grades improved. She made friends among the alien cadets, beings who had learned to see past their fear of and discovered the kind young woman beneath. She was happy, perhaps for the first time since leaving Earth. Watched her success with quiet pride. He was not as social as, but he did not need to be. He had her and she had him. That was enough. The day everything changed started like any other day. The morning alarm woke at 600 hours station time. She dressed in her training uniform, ate a quick breakfast, and met in the hallway outside her room. They walked to the combat training center together, as they always did. "Zero-gravity exercises today," said, "is supervising." Made a face, "Of course he is." The zero-gravity combat sphere was a massive ball of reinforced glass and metal floating in the center of the training complex. Cadets entered through airlocks and fought in 3 dimensions, learning to control their bodies without the comfort of ground beneath their feet. It was considered one of the most difficult courses at the academy. Was good at it, very good. Met them at the entrance. His pale face showed no expression, but his dark eyes followed with an intensity that made uncomfortable. Something felt wrong today. The air itself seemed heavier. Cadet said, "You will demonstrate advanced combat techniques for the class today. Enter the sphere." Nodded and moved toward the airlock, caught her arm. "Something is not right," he whispered. "Let me go instead." She smiled at him. It was the last time he would see that smile. "It is fine," she said. "Wants to embarrass me, that is all. I will not give him the satisfaction." She entered the airlock. The heavy door sealed behind her with a sound like a heartbeat stopping. Climbed to the observation deck with the other cadets. Through the reinforced glass, he could see floating in the center of the sphere, calm and focused. 3 cadets entered from the opposite side. They were supposed to be her training partners. The exercise began. Moved like water in the zero gravity, spinning and twisting in ways that seemed impossible. The cadets were fast, but she was faster. Her training weapons struck their targets again and again, marking points on the scoring system. She was winning easily. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness, total silence. Pressed his hands against the observation glass, his heart pounding. Emergency lights should have activated immediately. They did not. 30 seconds passed. It felt like 30 years. When the lights returned, world ended. Was floating motionless in the center of the sphere. Her training suit had been cut open in 7 places. Blood was leaking from the wounds, forming small red spheres that drifted around her like terrible planets orbiting a dying sun. The cadets were gone. They had exited through another airlock while the lights were off. Did not think, he did not plan, he simply acted. His fist hit the observation glass with all the strength of the reinforced polymer cracked. He hit it again, and again. His knuckles split open, blood mixing with the broken material, but he did not stop. He could not stop. On the 4th strike, the glass shattered. The pressure difference pulled him into the sphere. He did not care. He grabbed drifting body and held her against his chest. Her blood soaked into his uniform, warm and then quickly cold. Her eyes found his. She was still alive, but barely. Her breath came in small gasps that grew weaker with each passing second. She whispered. Her voice was so quiet that only a human could have heard it. Do not let them win." He held her. "Medical team is coming. Stay with me, please, stay with me." But she was already gone. He felt the exact moment when her heart stopped. 1 second she was there, his friend, his family, the only person in the galaxy who truly understood him. The next second she was just a body, empty and still and forever silent. The medical drones arrived too late. They always arrived too late. Did not release her. He floated in the zero gravity, covered in her blood, holding her cold hand, and something inside him changed. Something broke. Something new and terrible was born in its place. The Academy investigation took 3 days. 3 days of questions and reports and serious-faced officials making serious statements. In the end, they ruled death an accident, equipment malfunction. The lights had failed at a critical moment. The training weapons had somehow been replaced with real ones. Tragic, but unavoidable. No one was responsible. Stood in the back of the room when they announced their findings. He did not speak. He did not protest. He simply listened, his face as empty as the space between stars. Everyone knew the truth. Everyone knew that the had murdered her, but the had power, and power made its own truth. After the announcement walked past, the instructor did not stop, but he spoke quietly, words meant only for human ears. "Your friend should have stayed on her death world," said. "Perhaps you should consider doing the same." Did not respond. He did not need to. He had already made his decision. They had taken from him. They had killed her and called it an accident. They had smiled and walked away without punishment. They had forgotten what humans were capable of. They would remember soon enough. The memorial service was held in the station's great hall. Hundreds of beings attended. Some had known, most had not. They came because it was expected, because a cadet had died, because the Academy demanded their presence. Stood alone in the front row. He wore his dress uniform, cleaned and pressed, with no sign of the blood that had soaked it 3 days before. His hands were bandaged from breaking the observation glass, but he did not feel the pain. He did not feel anything. Speakers came and went. The Academy director talked about tragedy and loss, spoke about the importance of safety protocols, his voice steady and sincere, as if he had not orchestrated the murder himself. Alien diplomats offered condolences that meant nothing. Listened to every word. He remembered every face. After the service, an official approached him. She was older than, with expensive clothes and the confident posture of someone who had never been told no. "Such a terrible loss," she said. "Your friend showed great promise. The Academy will establish a scholarship in her name." Looked at her, just looked. His eyes held something that made her step backward without understanding why. "Her name was," he said. "Say it." The official blinked. Yes. The scholarship will be called the Memorial Fund, a fitting tribute, I think." "I think," said slowly, "that you should leave now." She left. Something in his voice made argument impossible. That night, alone in his room, finally allowed himself to feel. The grief hit him like a physical blow, driving him to his knees. He pressed his forehead against the cold floor and let the tears come, great shaking sobs that seemed to tear something loose in his chest. Was gone, his friend, his family, the only person in this alien galaxy who had made him feel like he belonged somewhere. He stayed on the floor for a long time. When he finally rose, his eyes were dry and his heart was cold. He walked to his room. The Academy had sealed it pending the transfer of her belongings back to Earth, but the lock was designed for alien strength, not human. Forced it open with one sharp twist. Her room still smelled like her. Green tea and the spices she used in her cooking and something else. something that was just. The photograph of her family still sat on her desk, smiling faces that did not yet know their daughter was dead. Sat at her terminal and entered her emergency access code. They had exchanged codes years ago during the orbital training program on Earth. A promise between, she had called it. If something happens to me, you check my files. If something happens to you, I check yours. The terminal activated. What found changed everything. Had been investigating for months. Hidden in encrypted folders, organized with careful precision, was evidence of a systematic campaign against human cadets. Sabotaged equipment, test results, medical records altered to make humans appear unstable, and communications, dozens of communications between officials discussing the human problem. The messages were clear. The Dominion viewed humanity as a threat. Humans were too strong, too adaptable, too ambitious. If they were allowed to rise in the Galactic Union, they would eventually challenge dominance. This could not be allowed. The solution was simple. Eliminate human cadets before they could graduate. Make it look like accidents. Spread rumors about instability. Destroy humanity's reputation before it could be established. Had discovered the truth. She had been gathering evidence, preparing to expose everything. That was why they killed her. Read every file, every message, every piece of evidence that had collected. The more he read, the colder he became. This was not about one murder. This was about the systematic destruction of his entire species. He found a final message, written the day before died. It was addressed to him. She had written, "If you are reading this, something has happened to me. I am sorry. I should have told you what I was doing, but I wanted to protect you. Now you have to decide what to do with this information. You can take it to the authorities, but I do not think they will listen. They have too much power, or you can do something else, something that only I would think of. I trust you to make the right choice. Whatever you decide, remember that I am proud of you. You are my family. Please do not let them win. Your friend always." Read the message 3 times. Then he every file to a secure device and deleted the originals from her terminal. He did not go to the authorities. Was right. They would not listen. They had too many connections, too many centuries of accumulated influence. Justice through proper channels was impossible. But there was another kind of justice, an older kind, the kind that humans had practiced for thousands of years before they ever reached the stars. Was a soldier. He had been trained to fight, to plan, to wait for the right moment and then strike without mercy. He had buried those skills when he came to the academy, hopping for a new life. Now he would use them again. He packed a small bag with essential supplies. His savings, converted them to untraceable currency. He recorded a message for his family on Earth, telling them that he loved them and that they should not worry. Then he submitted his resignation from the academy. The director tried to stop him. "You are emotional," she said. "Grief makes people do foolish things. Take time, consider your future." Looked at her with eyes that held no emotion at all. "I have considered it," he said. "My future is very clear." He left the station on the next transport ship. Behind him and his conspirators celebrated their victory. The human threat was being contained. The troublesome female was dead. The male had fled in grief. They did not understand what they had done. They had murdered his family. And now there was coming for them. For 3 months nothing happened. The galaxy continued to turn. Ships traveled between stars. Trade flowed through ancient routes. The Dominion conducted their business as they had for centuries, confident in their power. Returned to his comfortable life. He taught classes. He attended social functions. He smiled at his colleagues and accepted their praise for handling the human situation so effectively. Sometimes he thought about the girl he had helped to kill, but only briefly. She was just one human. There would be others, and they would be dealt with the same way. He did not think about it all. The male had disappeared, probably returned to Earth in shame. were emotional creatures ruled by their feelings. Without his friend, the surviving human was no threat. This was his mistake. Had not gone home, he had gone hunting. He moved through the galaxy like a ghost, using false identities and untraceable routes. He worked odd jobs to pay for travel. He slept in cargo holds and abandoned stations. He ate whatever he could find and drank recycled water. None of it mattered. Comfort did not matter. Only the mission mattered. He started with research. Files were extensive, but they did not contain everything. Needed names, locations, connections. He needed to understand the full scope of the conspiracy before he could tear it apart. He found allies in unexpected places. Not everyone in the galaxy supported the Dominion. Smaller species who had been pushed aside. Merchants who had lost business to monopolies. Information brokers who were happy to sell secrets for the right price. Slowly, carefully, built his map of the enemy. The conspiracy was larger than had known. It involved not just academy officials but politicians, military officers, and corporate leaders. They had been working against emerging species for centuries, not just humans. Dozens of races had been suppressed before they could challenge dominance. Some had been driven to extinction. Documented everything. He gathered evidence that could not be ignored or explained away, and when he was ready, he began his campaign. Was the first target. The instructor was alone in his quarters when the lights went out. He reached for his communication device, but it was dead. He reached for his weapon, but it was gone, removed from its hidden compartment while he slept. Then he heard breathing in the darkness, human breathing. "Who is there?" demanded, his voice cracking. "Show yourself." The lights returned, dim and red like emergency lighting, stood in the center of the room. He was thinner than before, harder, with eyes that held no warmth at all. "You remember me," said. It was not a question. Tried to run. He made it 2 steps before caught him. This grip was like iron, impossibly strong, crushing the instructor's arm until bones creaked. "Please," gasped. "I was following orders. It was not my decision." "I know," said. "You will tell me whose decision it was." What followed was not torture, did not need to hurt to make him talk. He simply explained in careful detail what would happen if the instructor did not cooperate. He described the evidence he had gathered. He described how it would be released. He described the consequences for everyone involved. Talked, he gave names and dates and locations. He explained the conspiracy in full, desperate to save himself. When he was finished, uploaded everything to the station's public information system. Every screen in Meridian 7 displayed confession. His crimes were broadcast to thousands of beings who had trusted him as a teacher. Then left. He did not kill. Death would have been too quick, too clean. Instead, he left the instructor alive to face what was coming. Was arrested within the hour. He spent the rest of his life in a prison cell, hated by his own people, forgotten by everyone else. One target down, many more to go. Moved through the galaxy like a force of nature. One by one, he found the conspirators. Some he exposed publicly, destroying their reputations and careers. Others he delivered to authorities with evidence so complete that even lawyers could not protect them. He was not cruel. He took no pleasure in his work. But he was thorough and he was relentless, and he did not stop. The Dominion began to panic. They sent agents to find him, but he was always 1 step ahead. They tried to discredit him, but the evidence was too strong. They tried to negotiate, but he refused to meet with them. Month after month, the campaign continued. High-ranking officials were arrested. Secret bank accounts were exposed. Hidden communications became public record. The Dominion's carefully constructed power began to crumble. And through it all, a message repeated on every frequency, in every system, translated into hundreds of languages. Her name was, "She was my friend. She deserved to live. Remember what happens when you murder a family." The galaxy remembered. Other species began to speak out. Victims of oppression came forward with their own stories. Evidence that had been hidden for centuries was finally revealed. What had started as one human's quest for revenge became something larger, a movement that could not be stopped. The Dominion's thousand-year reign was ending, and was not finished yet. He had saved the worst for last, the architects of the conspiracy, the beings who had given the order to kill and countless others. They thought they were safe, protected by wealth and power and centuries of tradition. They were wrong. Was coming for them, and nothing in the galaxy would stop him until his promise to was fulfilled. The Galactic Union Council met for the first time in 400 years. The Great Chamber, built to hold representatives from 1,000 worlds, was filled to capacity. Beings of every shape and size watched in silence as history unfolded before them. At the center of the chamber, in chains that could have been broken with a single twist of his wrists, stood. He was thin and tired. His hair had grown long during his months of hunting. His eyes, once warm with friendship and hope, now held only quiet determination. He looked like what he was, a man who had given everything for a cause greater than himself. The charges against him were read aloud. Unauthorized access to secure systems, assault on Galactic Union officials, disruption of interstellar communications, vigilante justice across 12 star systems. By the laws of the Union, he could be executed for any single one of these crimes. But the chamber was not filled with anger. It was filled with something else entirely. Outside the great windows, ships from dozens of worlds had gathered. Not military vessels, but civilian transports carrying ordinary beings who had traveled impossible distances to be here. They had come to watch. They had come to witness. They had come to see what the Council would do with the human who had torn down an empire for the sake of a friend. The High Speaker, an ancient being from a species so old that no one remembered it, called for order. "Of Earth," the Speaker said, "you have admitted to your crimes, you have offered no defense. Before we pass judgment, do you wish to speak?" Raised his head. His voice was calm and steady, carrying to every corner of the chamber without electronic amplification, had evolved to be heard. "I did what was necessary," he said. "Discovered that the Dominion had been murdering members of emerging species for centuries. She gathered evidence. She was killed to keep her silent. The Academy ruled her death an accident. The authorities refused to investigate. Justice through proper channels was impossible." He paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching him. "So I sought justice through other means. I found the truth. I exposed the guilty. I made sure that what happened to could never be hidden again. If that is a crime, then I am guilty. Judge me as you will." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded execution. Others called for immediate release. The debate raged for hours with no resolution in sight. Finally, an unexpected voice called for silence. She was young, barely an adult by her species standards. She came from a world that had been oppressed by for generations, her people forced into servitude by economic manipulation and political pressure. She had no authority to speak, but she spoke anyway. "My grandmother told me stories," she said. "Stories about the time before the came, stories about freedom and hope and a future that belonged to us. I never believed those stories. I thought they were just dreams." She pointed at. "He made those dreams possible again, not through politics, not through diplomacy, through action. He showed us that the powerful can be held accountable. He showed us that one person can change the galaxy." She looked at the council members with fierce eyes. "If you execute him, you prove that justice is only for the powerful. If you free him, you prove that things can be different. Choose carefully. The galaxy is watching." The vote took 3 days. Representatives argued and negotiated and made deals in back rooms. The faction fought desperately to maintain some fragment of their power, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. In the end, the result was clear. The Dominion was dissolved. Its leaders would face trial for crimes against sentient species. The Academy would be reformed, with representatives from every member world on its oversight committee. Reparations would be paid to species that had been victimized. And he was sentenced to exile. He could never hold official position in the Galactic Union. He could never command military forces or lead political movements. He would live outside the system he had helped to change. It was a compromise, a way for the Council to acknowledge both his crimes and his contributions. Accepted the sentence without protest. He had not done this for power or recognition. He had done it for. As he walked out of the chamber, a free man for the first time in months, he found a crowd waiting for him. Not protesters, not enemies, friends. Representatives from 30 different species had gathered to meet him. They were the forgotten ones, the oppressed ones, the beings who had never had a voice in galactic politics. They looked at him with something he had not seen since death. Hope. 1 year later, the Foundation was established. It was not a government organization. It had no official authority, but it had something more valuable: trust. The Foundation worked to protect emerging species from exploitation. It investigated corruption and exposed wrongdoing. It provided resources to worlds that had been neglected by the powerful. And it was led by a human who had proven that one person could make a difference. Served as the Foundation's first director. He worked from a small ship that traveled constantly between systems, never staying in one place for long. He trained others to continue his work. He built networks of allies across the galaxy. The elder species learned to speak his name with respect, sometimes with fear. The younger species spoke it with gratitude and hope. Human cadets at the Reformed Academy walked with their heads held high, knowing that one of their own had changed history. On his desk, there was a small photograph. It showed a young woman with black hair and kind eyes, sharing food with curious aliens, unafraid of a galaxy that had every reason to fear her. He looked at it every morning when he woke and every night before he slept. Sometimes, in the quiet hours between stars, he talked to her. "We did it," he would say. "They will remember, they will always remember." The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humans were forged by a planet that tried to kill them every day of their existence. They were stubborn and resilient and absolutely refused to give up. But more than that, they were loyal. They protected their own. They honored their promises, and they never, ever forgot their friends. In the great halls of power, new leaders spoke of cooperation and justice. In the academies, young beings of every species learned side by side without fear. In the dark corners of the galaxy, those who would exploit the weak thought twice before acting. Because somewhere out there, watching and waiting, was a who had shaken the foundations of an empire for the sake of a promise. And he was not finished yet. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter now, as if the galaxy itself had awakened from a long sleep. It was a new dawn, born from tragedy and forged in determination. Would have been proud.